Hello and welcome to Vox Markets. I am John Hewman and I'm joined today by Jeremy Skillington, Chief Executive of Poolbeg Pharma, to talk us through what has been a year of extraordinary progress at the company. Welcome, Jeremy.
Great to be on, John. It certainly has.
Indeed. I mean, I actually put a list together of all of the announcements that you've put out this year, and it's a long one. It's a very long one. So perhaps I understand you gave a presentation yesterday that sort of summarised a lot of this, and I've got a slide in front of me that says year in review. So perhaps we can start, Jeremy, by talking through that.
We can do that for sure. Yeah, we gave a good presentation last night, updated shareholders and interested investors in the Poolbeg progress. Yes, we spun out of hVIVO in July of last year, so we're a little like 17 months or so in. But this year has been quite remarkable. And you're right, the year in review has been extremely productive. I think key to investors is that we've kind of hit our goals and hit our milestones, stated goals and objectives. And in expanding our pipeline, building collaborations, pushing our programs forward, 2 deals around artificial intelligence. I can speak to those, but it's just been a remarkable year. But I think a lot of credit. We all work very hard in the background, but I've got a fantastic team behind me who are pushing from all directions. And I've said this kind of jokingly here on the past, we're all looking forward to just a little bit of a break over Christmas and come back stronger in the new year, because I think 2023 is going to be even more exciting for Poolbeg.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've been strengthening the team this year, looking at this slide. So, you got all the right pieces in place now.
That's exactly right. We did, as I say, when we spun out of hVIVO, we were fortunate to get some very knowledgeable and experienced colleagues that we shared at hVIVO. And now it's a case of, let's say, we're kind of leaving the nest in one sense. We're bringing in kind of new recruits. And this year, we brought in David English to head up business development. And again, a stated goal for Poolbeg is moving our programs forward into the clinic, getting early human clinical data, and then partnering. So David will be valuable to that. And of course, execution of these clinical studies. We brought on board Santala Rajbali, who she's a global program director, again, to push those programs forward. And again, we're very infectious disease focused for Poolbeg, very exciting space for the industry, for the world. There's a lot of focus on, on tackling infectious diseases. So we're happy to be in the sweet spot, as I say, to push programs forward and ultimately partner with pharma, who will then take it forward themselves in development and onto the market ultimately.
Perhaps you could sort of give us a bit of context. I mean, you just mentioned they're partnering with pharma. So can your business model is fairly unique. You describe it as capital light. And that's part of it. Can you just talk us through, before we sort of go into the detail of what you've done this year, what that actually means?
Absolutely. If you take a traditional biotech company, they may have an interesting target, an interesting drug they push forward. They'll raise money, venture capitalists, maybe on the public markets, and they spend a lot of time and effort on that one drug or that one target or that one disease. And that's very, very risky. So if we're capital light in that we want to get early human clinical data. And fortunately, in the infectious disease space, you can do that. These are usually short and sharp clinical trials where you get important human data that's then partnering ready. So that doesn't cost a lot of money, again, as I say, because of the duration of the trials primarily. But we're also clever in what drugs we bring into our pipeline. We tend to find those that are, we don't need to spend a lot of money up front to get them, into Poolbeg, and then push them forward ourselves. And as I said, the ultimate goal is for revenue generation, and driving shareholder value is pharma partnering. So the capital light is kind of along that. We don't spend a lot to generate that human data, and again, you can do that in the infectious disease setting.
We'll come on to the specific drugs in a moment. But the other aspects of your business model, which I find very, very interesting, you've alluded to it already, is your use of artificial intelligence. You've signed two deals this year. Can you tell me how they fit into the strategy and the execution?
Yes, again, very fortunate as part of the spin-out, we have access to this very unique data set. Our colleagues at hVIVO regularly, daily, run these human challenge studies. Essentially, they take in healthy volunteers, they challenge them with a virus. Could be flu, could be RSV, could be HRV. They did a COVID study for the UK government, but ultimately they're testing a partner's vaccine or partner's drug. But we've got access to the data that comes from that challenge study, whereby healthy volunteers, they get the virus, they get sick, they recover. And all the data points along the way, where they're healthy, where they're sick, where they're recovered. We've got samples from each and every day of that period. And then we can analyze and interrogate that. Now, it's a very large data set. So you need artificial intelligence, these very large computers, high-powered supercomputers to analyze the data, interpret the data. And we've drilled down to the details of gene expression profiles for a response to a particular virus, for example. So we're able to tell what genes are upregulated or downregulated in response to a virus. And from that, you can tell, why do some people not get sick at all? Why do some people recover quicker than others? What genes are at play for each individual? So we have two collaborations, one with 13 Biotech, who are based in the US, and they're looking at this very large data set around RSV, this respiratory syncytial virus, which is been in the news now recently because it's affecting a lot of people. It affects the very, very young, the very old in particular, but it's spreading this winter as again, one of your winter viruses. But on top of that, then we've got influenza data, where we're collaborating with Cytoreason, who are based in Israel. Notably, Cytoreason have 4 of the top 10 pharma companies working with them right now, including Pfizer, who are they're working with Pfizer looking at cancer data. So Cytoreason is a very credible company. So they've taken our influenza data and they're analyzing that, understanding again what happens as a disease progresses, what genes are up and down regulated, and in particular, in what cells these genes are up and down regulated, what part of the immune system is being activated in response. And ultimately, for these two collaborations, we're looking at new drug targets, and then finally new drugs themselves to take into the clinic and test in these infectious disease settings. So fascinating. It's cutting edge. It's unique to Poolbeg. Nobody else has the data set. So I think what comes out of this will be very attractive from a pharma partnering standpoint. So very excited about the two of those. From a timeline standpoint, we're waiting with bated breath from our colleagues at 13, where they plan to share some actual drugs against these exciting targets by the end of this year. So that's all on track. And then Cytoreason is into Q2 next year, where they're able to share what they see as highly valuable and prized targets to tackle influenza. So everything has progressed really well in those collaborations. And again, exciting time for Poolbeg to be executing, as I say, on our strategies to get these collaborations and the data, as they interrogated, come up with new targets and new drugs.
And so what exactly is the advantage of AI? Presumably it helps you accelerate the discovery process and also the efficacy of what you ultimately develop.
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, AI has come on board maybe in the last 5 or 6 years across the range of drug discovery, drug development in particular. And I give the example of POLB 001. That's our lead compound for severe influenza. We've just finished an LPS challenge study for that and are crunching the data, crunching the numbers. But that was discovered using a similar data set 5 or so years ago. But it was a very manual process that took many, many years to identify P38 as the target, and then ultimately identifying a drug, POLB 001, for that. But what we've seen with the collaboration with 13 as an example is that they've taken this large data set and have analyzed and come up with drugs and targets in 9 months. So we're really shortening the timeline. And to your point, I mean, you highlighted these, you could call kind of almost validated targets. They've taken the data that we have, so that there's a de-risked approach moving forward, that they've looked at this data set, they come up with new targets, and they know that these targets play a role in the disease. So if you block them, then there's a greater chance that you'll have success in the clinic. So you're kind of de-risking and accelerating at the same time, which is ideal in this industry.
Absolutely, it's an industry that's known for its risk. So anything that de-risks is obviously good news. Should we move on to POLB 001, which you've just mentioned? This is the sort of key drug, as you say. You've just completed those human challenge trials, which I think began in July. Yeah. So that's been a rapid trial.
Exactly, and that's that's the world we live in. As I say, these are relatively rapid trials. This is we started in July. Yes, we've completed all enrollments. We have 36 volunteers, and everybody completed the study. You might find in some clinical trials that not everybody completes the study for various reasons, and some of which might be there might be a serious adverse event, for example. But happily, at this stage, we can state that we had no serious adverse events. All 36 volunteers got to the end of the study, and now, as I say, we have a lot of data to analyze and interpret. Again, determining the level of efficacy of the POLB 001 blocking the inflammatory response in response to LPS, this lipopolysaccharide. And that drives an inflammatory response akin to what severe influenza will do. So we want to make sure we're blocking these cytokine storms that can drive diseases, infectious diseases. So we're crunching the numbers there. So we were delighted to get to this stage. By the end of the year, again, it was a stated goal that the trial will be finished before the end of the year, and then we expect the full data set to be analysed and completed by Q2. So that's ongoing right now. We started that process. But as I said, 36 volunteers and 3 different doses of the drugs, 2 different approaches for LBS challenge. One is intravenous and one is intradermal. So a lot of data will come out of this. And then we expect that when that's all analysed, we'll have a better understanding of the drug and its ability to block cytokine storms. And then that will be partner ready for pharma. And that's our goal for 2023.
What stage, what's next then on the road to commercialization, as it were?
Yeah, we've started the process of talking to pharma companies, talking about 001, the role of P38 in severe influenza. Again, that's unique to us. We've got intellectual property around that goes out to 2038. That to block the progression to severe influenza, you can use a P38 inhibitor, and we've got the patent, granted in the US and granted in Europe around that. So, talking to farmers, and that's where David comes in, laying the groundwork. And once the full data set is available, then, the deeper discussions with pharma around partnering. And we'd like pharma to take the drug from our hands and develop it in the field, as it were, in the severe influenza setting, and generate the necessary efficacy data in the field then for ultimately regulatory approval of the drug and on the market. But we leave that to pharma, who have the deeper pockets to fund these clinical trials, and obviously the expertise for going later into the clinic and commercialization. So that's all active. The ball is rolling in that situation.
I mean, you'd imagine that after several years of the pandemic, the focus on infectious diseases is massive, probably more massive than ever. What is the scale of the opportunity? And actually, I understand there are some significant advantages to your method, particularly the fact that you're planning an oral delivery mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there was an acknowledgement, I think, in the industry that they pivoted away from infectious diseases as a core area of focus. Maybe in 2010, 11, they spent a lot of money on oncology, through the teens, as it were, and on immunology-related diseases. And then the pandemic hit. And I think they realized that they weren't quite prepared. There's a lot of activity now around pandemic preparedness. This will likely happen again. Not necessarily a coronavirus, but there's concerns that the next pandemic could be influenza. So there's large activity within pharma, but also within government, in the US in particular, to fund programs such as POLB 001 as an example, to have that ready in case there's another pandemic. And you're right, as a small molecule, it's shelf stable. You can stockpile it, ready to go. And once we have that data in hand around severe influenza, I think that'll be very attractive. And I think it'll be attractive to pharma partners to have this as part of their pipeline. There is, as I say, there's opportunities here now in infectious diseases as the world kind of pivots back to quasi normality, but they want to make sure that what happened in 2020 2021 doesn't happen again. We've got to be better prepared the next time. So yeah, we're setting ourselves up nicely for that situation. Yeah,
and you announced some news this week on licensing oral delivery technology. So that was the second part of my question, because I understand that orally delivered vaccines are a significant advantage potentially to intravenous ones, and this is something that's being backed by government, as you mentioned as well. You've got a grant this year from the Irish government.
Yeah. Again, another highlight of the year. We initiated a collaboration with colleagues at AnaBio, who have this really clever encapsulation technology, and particularly for oral delivery of things like a vaccine or even a peptide. If you took a vaccine as it stood, your stomach acids and enzyme would just digest it. So you have to protect it from the stomach and get it into the gut and ultimately, into circulation. In the case of the vaccine itself, you want to activate the immune cells that are in the gut to kind of stimulate that mucosal immunity. So we started collaboration earlier this year, and then we applied for non-dilutive grant funding. Again, a stated objective of Poolbeg that we'd like other people to fund our programs. and the Irish government have contributed 2.3 million to this program to bring it through to clinical ready. And it's a collaboration with University College Dublin as well, who bring antigens against various infectious agents, and then Trinity College Dublin, who have adjuvants which stimulate the immune system. So that was great, as I say, to get that non-dilutive funding. That program, we're actually visiting our colleagues at AnaBio tomorrow as part of that collaboration. But this week we announced an extension onto our agreement, in that they've got some very interesting data around packaging and encapsulating GLP-1, which is a drug on the market for obesity and diabetes. And they're able to package that, protect it. You can take it orally, and it gets into circulation, and you're seeing effects on glucose, glucose levels. So they have that kind of early proof of principle. So now we've agreed to collaborate further and to take this into an exploratory clinical study next year. And that's going to begin in H1. So again, we see this as part of the Poolbeg. As I say, it's adjacent. You could say we're using the same technology as the oral vaccine, but from an obesity, diabetes is not infectious diseases, obviously. But we see it as great potential for partnering very quickly after getting this clinical data. And we've got a trial design that we're nearing completion. We've got a trial site. We've got a principal investigator. So again, this is all something that'll happen very rapidly, very quickly. Early human clinical data, and then partner. And of course, the market around diabetes and obesity is huge, particularly if it's an orally available drug. Yeah. So again, very excited about the combination of our clinical expertise along with AnaBio's technology to generate early human data for partnering.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating to see how you can apply this technology to other disease areas. Speaking of which, perhaps we could have a quick chat through your other drugs in development, POLB 002 and 003. What are they for? What stage of development they're at, and what milestones should we be looking at for next year?
Yeah, 002, very interesting program we in-licensed from the University of Warwick. And this is for broadly respiratory viral infections, so beyond flu. And it's a very clever approach where it stimulates the immune system. It actively blocks replication of influenza directly. And, I won't go into the mechanism of action, but it's a fascinating and unique one. But it also triggers the innate immune response to be ready for other viruses. So this is kind of a late preclinical stage. We're working towards manufacturing is a key next step there. So there's a few bits and pieces to put in place for that. So again, that'll be active in 2023. And then the third 003 is a vaccine against a bacterial disease called melioidosis, which is it's endemic in 35 or so countries around the world, primarily tropical, subtropical regions. The issue with this bacteria is that if you get it, there's a 54% fatality rate. So again, a pretty significant. So there's a large unmet need for a vaccine for this. And interestingly, I mentioned the US earlier on. The US Department of Defense see this as a bacteria, a potential bio threat, a potential bioagent. So they're interested in funding such programs as ours. So again, we'd be taking the non-dilutive funding route in that direction as well. So again, two interesting programs that kind of complement our infectious disease focus, and as I said, nice interest kind of externally to move these forward as well. To once we have that early human data, we see these as partnering ready.
I mean, speaking of funding, I mean, your cash position is strong. Lots of cash in the bank, which is always great to see in the biotech industry. Sure. Presumably enough that gets you, enough to get you quite far into your program towards commercialization.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in June 30th, we had 18.9 million sterling in the bank. Again, we're capital light. We have, we're moving, we don't spend heavily on the clinical program. So yeah, so we've got a long runway, but of course we want to supplement with the likes of the grant funding from the Irish government and others. We'll be applying for next year. And also, generating our own revenue from partnering activities over the next 12, 24 months. So yeah, so it's a nice buffer, but as I say, we spend judiciously, we spend wisely, and we see them as investments rather than spending. But as I say, we want to de-risk the programs we have and drive value from the data we generate.
And presumably, I mean, I guess it's hard to predict. You obviously there's commercial sensitivities, but I presume you're on the lookout for other potential drug candidates and treatment areas.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. We see ourselves as having multiple shots on goal. So it's building a pipeline. So as we partner one program, we want to have others coming through, so that we can, again, de-risk as well. So a bit of a conveyor belt, let's say, of assets, but absolutely right. We're, and David has hit the ground running from a BD standpoint, both in licensing and out licensing. And we've done diligence on a number of assets and are continuing to do diligence on others. So we're open to partnering to kind of build our pipeline, as I say, run these early kind of challenge studies, for example, to get human data. But absolutely, I say conveyor belt is the mantra to keep programs moving forward, and then supplementing with new products as we license others.
No, indeed. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. It's really, really interesting, and it's obviously, you're working on things that the world really needs. Thank you once again for your time, Jeremy.
That's why we get out of bed in the morning. We like to contribute. But I appreciate that. And as I say, it's been a terrific year for Poolbeg. And again, I compliment again the team that I have behind me, who've worked incredibly hard this year to push the programs forward. And I'm fortunate to be in their company. But we're looking forward to a little break over Christmas. But 2023, I think, will be an exciting year for the company.
Indeed. Well, enjoy.
Thank you. You too.